Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lei'd Back Life podcast. We talk about how to love life, entrepreneurship, and improve daily. Joining me today, a super awesome guest with I want to say, slightly different take on our normal things. Erin Andersen. For those who don't know, she's a flat rate hiring manager with a focus on workplace culture. She hires both support staff and associates on a flat rate retained search in order for small law firms to scale and grow efficiently. And I'm excited, one, because she's always a good chat, but two, I've never heard anybody have these sort of conversations about like culture as a retention model, culture as attracting better talent. So I'm super excited to talk about how having a better life lets you be a better firm owner, lets you attract better talent, retain better talent. Erin, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me here today.
We're continuing a trend of awesome guests with that lifestyle perspective. Last week we had Laura Cowan on talking about the lifestyle revolution, helping firm owners grow through like estate planning with a very low time commitment type thing. But we're here to talk about hiring and retaining people. I'm curious, how did you get into this?
Yeah, I did not have a recruiting background in corporate. I was actually in corporate banking before, but I entered severely bad cultures, which led me to want to make a change really. Instead of, I think a lot of people just leverage an existing skill set coming out, but I really wanted to take a bad situation and, something that people always said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And it not be so sorry to hear that. Instead, it could be something where I'm glad that led you to this place and making a change in other cultures.
And I would like to vouch for Erin. Erin, I specifically has not worked for people based upon their culture, what they were offering. When Erin talks about how important this is to her, I can 100% truly tell you she walks the walk.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we all know an experience of a bad workplace, or at least we've seen The Office. But my question though is how do we figure out what a good culture looks like for us, for our firms? Where do we start with setting the foundation of a positive work culture?
Sure. According to the firm or to the candidate?
Most of our listeners are going to be business owners. So let's start on that side.
Yeah. It's not the missions and values statement on their website. I hear that a lot. People just tell me to go there, and that's not where it is. Sometimes it means actually sitting down and defining on paper what your culture is instead of just allowing it to evolve, knowing that every single person that you hire is going to change it for good or bad, really, right? Sometimes it takes one hire to destroy a culture, and then you lose all your other employees because you didn't get rid of that employee in a timely manner according to their behavior. And so it's really making sure that it's defined, and it's asking your employees what they want. So instead of a partner just deciding what it is that they may like, you have multiple generations in firms now. They're going to have things that maybe a younger generation really prefers, or an older generation not so much. And so I don't consider it a benefit necessarily to every single level. So when a firm owner tells me, oh, I take them to dinners and I take them to baseball games and whatever that may be, that's a benefit to me, right? It's like medical insurance, but you also get all these other perks. But is it a perk actually for everyone in the office?
I love how you frame that. Have you ever read Delivering Happiness, Tony Hsieh's book about Zappos?
No, but I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
It's great. And unfortunately, he passed away. But the book's phenomenal. But he talks about that. He had a company before Zappos. I don't remember what it was. He's like, but one day I walked in and I realized I just hated the culture. He's like, I had gotten too far away from it. And so he sells the company, sells his stake in it, whatever, and ends up using the money to fund Zappos. And then now you have a company that was bought by Amazon for billions of dollars, basically because of good customer service and good culture. There's a ton of financial value to this, but the way that he explains the emotional side of it, I think is the more obvious benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can you also stand out on a job posting, right? If you're looking for new talent in your firm, what is it that you do differently? Because now sometimes the dinners or baseball games are pretty standard. But maybe there's catered lunch every day. Maybe we make it a little bit more like a tech company and it's not just a law firm. That's a huge perk to get people back into the office. So it's being strategic with, if it's going to be remote, how do I still give them the interaction? If it's going to be in person, how do I get them excited to actually come into the office every day?
But like, is that the question? Is it really just like coming up with your own answer to those questions?
When I speak to a firm, yeah. So it really comes down to the personality of everybody in the firm. And one of the main questions I always ask to begin is what has worked and what hasn't. And that doesn't always just be from a talent perspective, but what strategies did you originally define your culture and have you had to change it and why? So it's like dissecting it from day one. How has it evolved? And then I more evaluate it based on their answers. And then sometimes there's culture work that has to be done before I can even begin to hire for a firm. I have firms come to me and tell me they have a retention problem, and I wouldn't hire for that firm unless we actually fix what's going on. I mean, you could do a really deep dive. I go on and do on-sites where I can distribute culture surveys. Sometimes that's just to candidates, but it could be to all employees that we find what are the common values if we literally need to define the culture from scratch.
How do we balance that culture where it currently is with what we aspire to be? Do we need to find a middle point? Do we just go for the aspiration? Like how does that work?
I think it depends on the age of the firm and how willing the partners and current employees are willing to evolve. But sometimes firms are also having to maybe stretch their mindsets a little bit is the right terminology for a new generation. And post-COVID, there's been a lot of different expectations or even competition with firms relooking at their culture for the first time. And it's very obvious in a job posting. So while they may not immediately want to shift their culture, they may have to stretch it. And, maybe their aspiration for their culture is over the next 5 to 10 years. But if we want to attract talent, then we should really be tackling that now and starting to make the change for long-term and sooner effect.
So I'm imagining the majority of this, we're talking about an age gap between okay, cool. So what are younger employees looking for on average? Obviously, everybody's an individual unicorn, etc. But like, what are the most common things that you see firms having to change to attract younger talent?
Sure. So shockingly to the older generations, they would prefer flexibility over salary. And there are partners that just cannot even wrap their head around it. When I'm working on job postings, they're like, let's just keep increasing the salary. And it's like, that's not really it. I mean, I've tried to explain to firms several times, and many of them do adjust this. Hybrid doesn't have to mean even weekly hybrid. Hybrid could mean once or twice a month, but just having that flexibility that 1 or 2 days they're able to work from home is standard in today's market. And so to offer something that's just fully in person without any flexibility at all, then we have to, if that's really the case, then I'll say that we really need to look at other perks, because lunch isn't just going to get them in. It'll get them halfway there. But what are we going to do? What other types of flexibility can we offer to make sure that not only can we get the talent, but can we retain them?
Okay, so this is not a truly selfish question, but like what you said resonates so well with me. Like talking to firm owners about, no, they actually want to be paid less. Have you ever told them like just hire 2 people? Because like I have so many people that like I talk to who have this. I grew up working 80-hour weeks, and these people want to work 35. And like, but they're willing to work for enough money. Just hire 2 of them. Like, is that a thing that you've actually advised people to do? Okay.
Yeah, that's come up 1 or 2 times, I'd say probably in the past. Yeah, a lot of them just keep increasing the salary, and that's something that I usually don't approve because I'm not going to make them spend money they don't need to.
Right.
The hybrid aspect, I would say, is the biggest thing in today's market, is understanding that it doesn't have to be a 4-1 schedule or a 3-2 schedule. But yeah, it could be hiring additional talent just at a lower rate and still getting the same amount of work done. And maybe that means remotely, because, right, that opens up a whole nother pool of candidates.
Sure.
Huge.
For these firms having that hybrid ability to be hybrid, ability to work remote, what do you see being like the most common things you have to implement to help them make that change?
Processes for sure. So if they've never hired remotely or a hybrid, this comes up a little bit more in a remote setting, but even a hybrid setting, making sure that they have the right equipment. So they really should be operating off of the office equipment. So what I see most often is they're like, I just want to hire immediately. I can't tell you how many emails I get a week of someone saying, I need to hire right now. I want $1 million right now, right? Like it's just not possible because the hiring process takes several months, period, regardless of when you contact me. And so they'll say, I'm ready to hire. And it's like, well, you're probably not, because if you're a newer firm, there's equipment, there's contracts, there's so many things that aren't in place. And then what tends to happen is if it is a quick hire, then when it comes to the start date that they thought they wanted last night, well, now it's a couple weeks out because we don't even have the equipment. These are things that have to be discussed up front. That's a huge aspect. Just getting everybody on the team to be on board with somebody being hybrid. Sometimes there's an exception made for younger talent now. And sometimes that means also adjusting everyone else's policies in the office or giving more flexibility based on the needs. And that can take a while. It's not always overnight.
Do you see that being a net positive, or do you see situations like that actually driving a wedge between newer employees and older employees?
I think it depends on the number of employees and how long they've been there. So what I try to tell law firm owners is keep in mind, as much as we're recruiting new talent, your employees are getting recruited every single day. They're getting the LinkedIn messages. The other recruiters are sending them the perks. And so even if we weren't hiring new talent, at some point, they're likely going to be incentivized to go after something else unless they're the most loyal employee ever.
Well, and I think you get more loyalty having a better culture too.
100%. Yeah, if you're treated better, they're going to stay longer.
Yeah, I saw a thing, I don't know if it was a study or something, where like the percentage of people that leave over money versus leaving over a bad manager, and it's like night and day. Like the bad manager, the money doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, exactly. Just feeling like it's I compare it to owning a business where I don't get that nervous stomach or nervous feeling the night before of a Monday, right? Like I have the ease of recording a podcast on a Monday and making it a little bit easier than just work at an office in a cubicle, right? And so, I try to get them to think like that for their employees. They opened a business for many reasons, but probably management was some aspect of it. And so knowing that, how can you make it feel a little bit easier for your employees so that they don't go through something similar that they did at one point?
Makes sense. Yeah, I know, like the old concept of like the fraternity hazing, right? Like we went through it, you have to as well. And I was like, but why? Like that makes no sense. Like it was miserable for us. It should be miserable. I'm like, no, it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I hear that a lot too.
So other than the remote, what are some of the other most common culture updates, refreshes, additions that you see yourself pushing firms to implement?
Sure. Some type of, or what I've seen firms do that I really agree with, are different types of bonus structure. So I've seen firms do like a reward system, not just for their work completed or hours billed, but helping teammates out. That's huge. And so recognizing when they, especially in a hybrid or remote environment, recognizing that they're leaning on each other and being rewarded for that at the firm's expense is pretty cool. I've seen that. I've seen a lot of firms start to adopt, the tech catered lunch, which is definitely a perk. I've seen firms do like every single Thursday, we do lunch as a group and it gets everybody, all the staff, all the associates together. What's great is if there's something like that in place during an interview process is to invite the prospect there. Everybody's at the same table, right? Like we get to really feel it out. And I always view an interview, especially in a final stage, as it's pretty equal. That candidate is also choosing if they want to be a part of this culture or not. So I think that's huge. I've seen 3 firms now paying for vacations for their employees. That's a new one that I have not seen in the past. That's more of a Q4 last year into this year. I've been seeing a lot more of that. Bonuses being distributed quarterly instead of annually, which I love because it also typically comes with performance review. So people know how they're doing and they can be rewarded on a faster basis, which increases retention. Some of those other cultural perks tend to be pretty standard that you're seeing in a lot of job postings, but those are a few things that I'm seeing a trend of in 2025.
Makes sense. And the crazy thing for me is like the amount of study, like the vacation one, right? You could find all these studies that talk about employees that actually take vacation have fewer sick days and are more productive. And
Right.
so like it amazes me the ability of a business to like come up with the financial benefit of those
Yeah.
things, but also knowing that like it's a cool perk, it's a nice thing to do. It shows more
Yeah.
support for people.
Well, I mean, they appreciate it so much that I've even heard it on the reverse side of an interview where someone will say, I really appreciate the firm I'm at now. They've done X, Y, and Z. And it'll come up in an
Mm.
interview. They're like, I just know that I can't grow here. That's the only reason I'm leaving, but I feel horrible for doing so. And so if it's coming up at an interview, they've really impressed their employee or employer.
From those discussions,
Mhm.
what are there any like the most interesting things you've seen people do that were commented on that wasn't expected?
What do you mean?
Like the most surprise, like these interviews you have where people are like, oh, I really love that my current company does X. Like, has there been a most surprising answer that you've gotten recently?
Ooh, in an interview specifically.
Well, or outside an interview. I think
Yeah,
everybody, most firms, I'm sure, don't do the low hanging fruit stuff. But then, like, as they're
sure,
looking for that next step, like, oh my God, this one firm did X and it was great. Like, consider
sure.
that.
Treatment goes really far in terms of how understanding people are. So when people have gone above and beyond, when somebody has a sick family member, I've heard this recently, or a child's born, and the flexibility that that firm had, because I have definitely heard the opposite in terms of people being laid off while they're pregnant or terminated or all these cases. But I actually find that employees tend to be super appreciative when the firm goes out of their way when life gets really difficult for them. So sometimes I've seen that be a firm hiring a temp or somebody contract, or even just saying, we're at the point of growth anyway. Let's hire an additional employee, but this person's spot isn't gone. They still have a spot at this firm when everything clears up that's going on in the moment.
Well, and like, look, I totally understand the financial pull of something like that, but especially like when you're talking about months and months and months it takes to hire somebody, like if you have this great person and they're looking for some time off to be with their
Yeah.
kid, like it
Retain.
might take you longer to fill the position, let alone
Yeah.
then train them up from where that person is versus,
Yeah.
giving
Yeah.
somebody extra time off or having a temp in the meantime, whatever you can
Sure.
do to mitigate the situation on the
Something
business
I
side.
Something I've heard too is I've heard of firm owners just being very conscientious when they're at different events. So, like a silent auction, instead of taking that item and having it for themselves, distributing that to an employee who like really went out of their way in the past year. And that could be a trip, it could be golf clubs, whatever it may be. But just even having that thought of thinking of their employees and not just themselves, I think really stands out. Um, the trips can
Wait,
also
hold on. Before you go to the next one, I want to give a shout out. So, because I was at an event with Brett Tremblay, and I think at this point it was 3 years ago, and he 100% bought one of like the 7-day trips for the silent auction for one
really.
of his staff members. And I think about that all the time. I'm like, that
Yeah.
was such a cool move. He's like, oh my God, so and so wanted to go there. That's the auction item. Like, I got it. I know who that's going to. So
Yeah.
it stood out to me, and I wasn't the one who got it, let alone the person who did.
Ooh, that's cool. Wow. So there's other people doing it as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like a weekend trip. Like if someone's had a really hard week, I've seen people even like extend, like I live in New York City to upstate New York or something, that's just thinking ahead of, ahead of the game. Another thing would be, asking more junior level associates to go to a conference that they otherwise may have not been to, which sounds really simple, but I've interviewed a lot of people that have told me that their firm owners would never even ask them to attend. And it's not something that they could attend on their own. And they're like, that was huge for my personal growth. And it made me a more loyal employee because they're invested in me. Because often the cost is a lot as well.
Well, and I always think about it like, what's the things we can do that are truly remarkable, right? That somebody will
Right.
remark upon. And so many of these conferences, like it's a $700 a night hotel, but there's like a $200 a night room block.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's like, oh my God, like, hey, come with me to this 3-day conference. I'll put you up in I'm going to Nashville, like the Grand Ole Opry, whatever it is,
Yeah.
the Grand Ole Opry place. Super
Yeah.
cool. It's the largest Marriott hotel in the world. It's got all
Yeah.
this cool stuff inside. Like it becomes a thing. Like you can turn the thing into an event that is a totally different vacation than how most people normally travel.
Right, 100%. Yeah, and it's just being included, right? Especially thinking of a new employee just joining a firm. That's a great way to say, hey, I want you to come with me. I want you to be there and represent the firm, that they feel even confident enough at that point to have them be with them.
I love that. Okay, so I want to transition eventually to like how being a better person, having a better life helps you attract talent. But before we get to that, for the firms that know that they need to work on their culture, like where do they start?
Hmm. Yeah, so I'm certified in a program called Culture Talk, and so that can look like a variety of ways. The company has specific culture surveys, which if they really want to do a deep dive, this is a separate service outside of just recruiting, but we could sit there and define their culture. I like to do it on site because I think it's a lot more effective. But if we're able to then define their culture and we have the values of all of those employees, then we're able to also distribute a culture talk survey to people that are in a final stage interview. And instead of just doing like a DISC assessment, now we actually have a culture survey that we can marry those results and see if it's a good match versus just what we're seeing. So that would be a way to do it, say, extensively if they want to make the investment and the time, right? And making sure they're doing that up front. The second thing would be for a firm, if they're just looking to define it because maybe they haven't, or improve it or put it on paper, is to really ask all of their employees not only what they're looking for, but why they've stayed. I ask firms this all the time, is who is your longest lasting employee at the firm? And I want to speak to them. And I ask them why they've stayed, and I incorporate that in the blurb that I put on a job post, because it's always something different and it's always different from what the partner says. It makes the partner feel good too, to understand, oh, that's what's keeping somebody here, because I know that they've been attempted at least to get recruited at some point, or they've looked at another job post. But that's a good way too to ask all of your employees why they've stayed.
Well, and it's proof of concept, right? Like if your longest tenured employee has only been there for 3 months, there isn't a culture. You know, if they've been there for 10 years, there's a good enough culture to keep somebody for that long.
Yeah, absolutely. And every single partner that I've ever told to do that, they've never done it before. So there's usually an aspect of, wow, I love this employee, but I've never actually asked specifically that question, right? They get feedback, but getting really, really specific on questions will just help the firm grow long term anyway, because they know what strategies are working.
So you mentioned like doing the survey of employees, both as a group at the beginning, but then also like the longest tenured employee. How much of this culture is democratic from that standpoint versus like, I want to call it, I don't want to call it dictatorial, but like how much can an owner set the culture down versus it being like horizontal across everybody who's there?
Like how much can they change it based on what they already have?
Well, so like you mentioned, either doing these surveys of the employees or at least interviewing the longest tenured employee.
Sure.
And so like to me, that gets us like a democratic view. Like this is what everybody agrees to, or this is what this one person likes.
Yes.
And like I hate using the word dictatorial in this context, but like how much of culture can be top down? Because everything you're talking about now is more like bottom up culture. It's what the employees are currently saying.
I think it has to be very carefully done to not make people leave either. So it has to be done slowly, and with new talent. So we understand why it is that people stayed, and sometimes it's the gap of what is missing. So that can be identified through those surveys in the firm. But even when I'm hiring new talent, I'll ask, what is it something that, not just technically, but what is it something your firm doesn't have right now that would be a huge asset in this new hire? And it's really hard to get a firm to think outside of the technical. Is it personality? Is it something with clients? Is it something that's missing in the office? Do you not have the person that brings everybody for drinks or dinner after work? Right? Not a lot of the times you'll have, depending on the area of law, you might have a very introverted firm. Can we possibly hire that more extroverted employee to gather them for whatever that may be, a happy hour or even a holiday event, the person that takes charge and brings everyone together to create community?
Is that something that you're pushing them affirmatively to do, or is that something that you're helping them uncover that they're lacking from the reflective standpoint?
I'll more identify if it's missing and then encourage it, but I would look for that in a new hire, or so suggest it, but often because I would be recruiting for that firm anyway, I would be looking for that in the personality of the new hire.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How does a firm know either A, that they have a good culture, or B, that their culture is getting better? If they know they're working on it, like what does it look like when this is running well?
Sure. It really comes down to retention and transparency through communication. So I think the new quarterly bonus structure with reviews is huge, but asking culture specific questions, which I can provide the firm. So moving forward, we just onboarded a new employee. I check in with them every 30, 60, 90 days. Okay, great. Are you asking these specific questions? Because another issue you can run into is a firm can think everything is going great. They're getting their work done, they're settling cases easily, but have they actually stopped to ask the employee, how is it going? Is there something that's missing here, or how can we improve? And the firms that choose not to do that is often what leads to poor retention. You can see on recruiting platforms now, you can also see hiring turnover. So just what's going on at these firms. And I think it's the firms that don't stop to not just ask existing talent, but new talent really within 6 months or less. How are you liking it here?
Well, if nothing else from this episode, you've made me feel better about my employee evals, because I always ask those questions, and I always ask what question didn't I ask? What? It's amazing to me the access to answers, insight that we have among the people already there. Sure. I guess it's just that question of either the comfort level of asking or the knowledge that they can ask employees those sorts of questions.
Yeah, and we're just too busy, right? Think about how many, I don't know about you, but how many times I know in corporate that my annual review would get pushed to the next week, to the next week, to the next week. And so not thinking that's not as important as their trial, but really it is, because what if the attorney quits before the trial, right? So being mindful of these reviews and conversations and just creating an environment or a lunch setting where people feel really comfortable opening up. I don't think that just calling somebody into an office with a piece of paper sitting across a desk is the right time, or when somebody's going to be very transparent. They're more nervous about what their bonus is going to be and, if they met their billables. So it's thinking more strategically of how can I get them in the right setting to give me the answer that I need.
I love that. Well, and so I always look at it this way. To me, my law firm's internal culture should be as close to a reflection of our external brand as possible. The more cohesiveness you have between that. If you are branding your firm as family friendly and a small group setting, and when we're here, we're a family, we're a team, whatever, your culture should reflect that. And I think you agree with me on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this is something I had an attorney tell me one time, that they didn't want to use the word family because not everybody likes their family, which was kind of eye-opening, right? We think of this term as, well, it feels warm and cozy. Well, there's many people that don't feel wedded into their family or actually don't want a work environment like that. So if, sometimes I'll use the terminology of close-knit instead of family after hearing somebody tell me that, or diving a little bit deeper, what does close-knit mean? Does that mean everyone talks about their personal life, or does that mean everyone helps each other out on a case, right? Let's talk about this further. And, sometimes there's women-owned and led firms where everyone's a mom. And so that's important, because then let's talk about how everyone understands, or even parents, everyone understands parent issues, right? That's really attractive to many people looking to also switch from big law to small law.
I mean, personally, I hate we're a family here, not because I don't like my family, but because I don't choose my family. I choose my staff, and it should be in both directions. My family is stuck with me. My staff is not. So,
yeah.
Okay. So I want to transition to the lifestyle aspect of this. But before that, I want to talk about this week's newsletter. So if you all are watching this when it first came out, it's Tuesday. This Friday, the newsletter is on your business origin story and why you should tell it more often. Honestly, a lot of this newsletter goes into exactly what Erin's saying, just from the company standpoint. externally instead of the company standpoint internally on the culture. So I'm digging it. It's going to be a really good newsletter to come out of this. Talk to me about lifestyle, the impact of the business owner having a better life, how that can impact the culture, how that can impact retention.
Yeah. Even the energy that a new client can give off in an email is a good indicator for me of how they're taking care of themselves in the firm. Again, I get a lot of emails last minute of I need to hire right away. Okay, well, what does that mean? Why did somebody leave in such a rush? What's going on that this was put on the back burner? Like the firms that I hire for continuously are the firms that know when to delegate, that somebody's not overworked. And usually if the employees are overworked, the firm owner is overworked. Always. And so the people that are waiting till the last minute, like you said, you can even give it to 2 employees and hire remotely if possible. Give them more flexibility, right? It's amazing. Even in the state, a lot of people get so worried about a remote role because of a bar license. You can hire in the state of Massachusetts, for example. Maybe they just don't live right in Boston. They go to court once a week, right? So thinking very strategic about that. But the firm owner's energy personality really reflects what's going on at the firm. I find that every single time. And that's something that I also choose to sometimes not hire for a firm, because if I feel that that's going to come across in an interview, I always say, like with my brand, I have to be very, as much as I'm working for the firm, I have to be very confident that I'm sending my candidates to a place where they're going to be treated correctly. And if there's any red flags, that really comes down to those initial conversations I have, then it's not a good fit for me either, right? And so sometimes I will give suggestions to firms, like if there's that panic feeling, it's gonna come across in an interview of like the neediness.
Right.
And so sometimes, I will give suggestions of business coaches, for example, like where they should go first to put systems in place before we even go to hire. Because if we're just adding somebody else on and there's no systems or operations, it's going to be more chaos. And sometimes that new hire isn't really what they need. It's to get organized and understand where they're going long term.
And while Erin said that nicely as a shout out to me as a business coach, I'm going to take it as a personal attack as a terrible business owner years ago, because I never had those things in place. And so
Yeah,
we had a lot more turnover until how is somebody supposed to know what to do if you don't know what you want them to do? So
exactly.
I'm with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I give the example of I'm about to hand off my Google Drive to my assistant in 2 weeks, but I won't even let her look at it until I organize it, because she wouldn't even know what's going on, and then it's going to give her a headache, right? So thinking ahead of, if you even want an assistant for your law firm, what you're going to give them access to, is it at least somewhat organized so that they take it on and it doesn't become a frustration to them like it is to you. That's really important.
Well, or you hire somebody who like their superpower
Mm-hmm.
is is the organization, right? Like you can find the Marie
Sure.
Kondo of your Google Drive or whatever is out there somewhere. Like that's
Right.
okay, but make sure the employee knows, like, hey, the first part of your job is figuring out what this is going to look like.
Right. Right. Giving them a little
I
bit of a
just
taste into it.
I think hiring is so much like dating, and it's always weird to me the people that like fake who they are
Yeah.
during dating, and then like this is why people get divorced, because they finally became themselves 5 years down the road, or they hired somebody who and they didn't tell them, like, we're going to have a prayer circle every Monday morning at the firm. Like if you do
Right.
those things, be honest with people about it.
Oh,
Like don't
yes.
don't wait to surprise them with
I have to add one point onto that, because I find this to
sure.
be, I do a lot of interview coaching as well. And when I'm interview coaching people, I try to become, I feel like one of my sweet spots is finding like really unique questions to ask these firms. But not a unique question, but something that's rarely asked is during an in-person interview, is to ask for an entire office tour. And this is twofold. So the first being, as a candidate, usually more in corporate, but even in a small law firm, that conference room tends to be towards the front of the door. They usher you in, they usher you out. And unless you ask for a tour, it's rarely given. But like asking to meet the other people, you don't want to just meet the partners. Who are you going to be working with? But also, do people look like they love what they're doing? Do they look happy? Are they in a comfortable setting? And are there things in the office that you agree with or don't agree with, right? Like everybody puts up their own decorations or whatever that may be. And same thing with the firm. Like if there's something that you're very confident in displaying in the firm, whatever that may be, like you want potential employees to see those things and not have it come up like on the first day or weeks later.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's 8 billion people in the world. There's 500,000 law firms. Like, I have to imagine there's the right fit for everybody, and everybody's the right fit for somewhere or
Sure.
somewheres. But
Right.
like the fact that none of us are safe being honest with each other at the beginning, or I
Yeah.
should say, to the extent that you are safe being honest at the beginning, you will find a better fit in the end.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting.
So, how else do we incorporate a better life into the hiring process? Like when you let me start with this one. When you
Mhm.
talked about the remote ability, to me, like that screams, I want to be able to work from anywhere. So it's fair to make sure my employees can work from anywhere too. So like I like the alignment of those things. Like me having a more flexible life forces me to develop the systems to help other people have a more flexible life. But like what else where else does the owner's lifestyle play into a better business, a better culture, a better finding and retaining clients? Or sorry, employees, not clients.
Sure. Something that comes up during the hiring process, which usually I would imagine comes up in general, is not being very transparent, like with me or candidates or their employees of when they're going to be out of office or like their upcoming plans. So sometimes there's like this big expectation of employees to give a lot of notice, but then the firm owner doesn't give their employees a lot of notice or candidates. So like that's something that I see
Oh.
often, which is really interesting. And then everybody kind of scrambles, like they almost forget. Um, and then that can become quite an issue. I think it's a lot of like practice what you preach and learn from your employees too. So a lot of the times they'll be willing to make these adjustments and then they aren't experimenting with it themselves. So sometimes I think if a firm owner actually just gave in to what they're offering their employees for themselves, they might enjoy their life just a little bit more. There's, I think,
Please tell me you've seen that. Please tell me you've seen like the
oh yeah,
60-year-old firm owner who's like, I can work from home a day or two a week now that I hired these new young,
never.
these young whippersnappers. Never.
No,
Ah.
never. It's like they are so stubborn about proving a point, and it, I don't know why. I don't have an answer for this, but I think if they almost took the advice of their new employees of how great it is in their lifestyle that they're leading, that it would just be a happier place in general in these firms.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I just I hate the concept of like I'll be happy when we're $1 million firm. I'll be happy when I hire this person. I found
Yeah.
it so much better to be like, no, I'll be happy now, and those things will come to me. Like I will show
Yeah.
up nicer to the interview, and I'll be the right fit for them, just as much as them being the right fit for the company and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. Um, I think it also says a lot when firm owners, I've heard this come up in interviews or it just being very respected when firm owners are in masterminds or have business coaches, like that's very well regarded by employees. It'll come up during an interview. Sometimes they're part of the interview process, actually. And that can be really helpful for the firm owner's lifestyle. So that in the case of there's a personal crisis, a lot of the times that business coach will step in and help with the interview process, help evaluate because maybe they've been coaching them for a long time. I hear really, really good remarks from candidates when they see that. They're like, wow, they're not just thinking they can do it all. And even that candidate recognizes that really early. So, you can't do it by yourself. Like, and I'm not just saying that because you're a business coach, but it's true, right? Like they
I'll pay you on the
like
side when we're off camera. I'll show you the.
right. Like
No, I mean,
it's amazing even how young talent like I guess being in my field and being a legal service provider, I can preach that all day long, right? And say they need you. But people see it really early on and they're like, even a young person out of law school, they're like, we don't learn anything with business. Wow, they have this person that's going to help them. And I think it really stands out from the firms that I hire for that have the coaches.
I will say, so I had probably 2 weeks ago, my staff was like, oh, or my EA was like, oh, you have this recurring meeting with so and so, like anything you need from me. And I was like, no, it's my business coach. And they were
Right.
just like, you meet with a business coach too? That's awesome. So I
Yeah,
like
it's like, oh,
I
right.
never realized that was a, but I mean, I guess it makes sense, right? Like, if show me your calendar and your checkbook, I'll show you where priorities are. So if they're meeting with a coach, if they've got these resources, like they're in it for the long haul, they're hoping to get the best information,
Yeah.
etc.
I think I just feel like they never really realize that unless I tell them that. And they're like, wow, they saw that. I was like, yeah, big part.
All right, so I'm going to take some of your advice and give it back to you. What questions haven't I asked that we should cover? Or what feedback do you have on questions I could ask to get more great information from you?
Sure. The office tour, the question we just over was actually one of the things that I was going to bring up because I just think that's so essential and not usually offered or asked about by either party. Um, I think the proactiveness and building out your culture and looking at it every single year is key. So just like we look at our numbers and we look at I was in a networking meeting the other day, and shout out to Christine Raniatz, if anyone knows her. She does logo branding for law firms. And she said in this meeting how you should look at your branding every so like throughout the year, but especially when you're doing these strategy meetings. And I was like, wow, that's what they should do with their culture because it's changing. If we've hired at least one new higher, then the culture has shifted no matter what, and hopefully for the better. But let's look at it again. So when we're getting together with our business coach and we're going over numbers and strategy for the next year, branding, et cetera, now let's look at culture and see also what is the gap, like I mentioned before, with technical skills or administrative or personality in the firm.
So I always try to balance like my KPIs and my gut, right? And like ideally my
Yeah.
gut thinks it's right and the KPIs support it. From a culture standpoint, like what are we looking for? Like is it a feeling? Is it a raw number of retention? Is it both of those things? Is it something else? Like what is that
Hmm.
evaluation that it's right?
Think it's very dependent on the firm. I think retention is a huge part. I look at it more as, is the firm taking the right actions to maintain the positive aspects of their culture, and are they constantly looking to improve it? Sometimes a firm, like during a consultation, will say, oh yeah, like we already have our culture figured out. Like, do you? Right? Like what does that actually mean? And so are they willing to be evolving with the times? Ever since COVID, things are changing every single year. Even with AI, right? So sometimes candidates will ask something about like, is the firm integrating AI and how so? And there's firms that aren't. And so they're not always going to attract the right candidates, but it's more about, I would say, less metric, although retention is huge. But are you continuously seeing how you can improve it and asking your current employees the right questions so that we're also attracting the right talent moving forward, right? If I can get feedback or I know the culture that's wanted and exists, then it's a lot easier for me to also recruit the right talent more efficiently for the firm, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, and so like I don't understand people not incorporating AI, but I get like the finding the right balance. I think that's what companies need more of though. Like no company is going to get out there and say we treat our employees poorly. None of them are going to say like our employees don't matter. Like everybody's going to say the same thing, except when you find the things where people can argue both sides, like the upside of family, the downside of family. Like finding these things
Right.
that people are looking for the way you do it and the way you don't do it, like that needs to be the things I think you are loudest about
Yeah.
because there is another company doing the opposite that might be more attractive to certain candidates or vice versa.
Yes, and I think all these assessments that are out there are good. I think a lot of firms take them to the grave and they think it's the end all be all. And I very much disagree with that, to take them with a grain of salt, because it depends on the day that they're taking them, even culture, right? If somebody has a very bad experience at the firm in the last week, or they've had something tragic happen in their personal life, they're going to answer it drastically different. And so I know these assessments are pushed really hard and they can be great, but just consider that that should not be the final decision-making tool.
I love that. Yeah, I think back to honestly the first time we did the DISC assessment. I had one of my former employees take it. I was like, best employee I'd had at the time, left for I could not, had to move home, taking care of family, like there was no chance, and it had to be an in person. And it was so funny because at that time I was like on the fence about firing one of my other employees, and both of them had the exact same DISC assessment and the same motivating factors, and I was just like, dang it, like if they were drastic opposites, I would know going forward, but just finding those things, yeah.
And also
I'm
maybe
with you.
have people like
I'm
retake assessments, right? Like that's another thing, is sometimes they take them right before they're hired and then it's 10 years later and they're a completely different person. So whether it's the questions being asked as not just their like technical skills evolve, but different things happen in their life. So that goes back to the culture of flexibility and changing expectations. Somebody coming back from maternity or paternity leave, just asking the question of, is there something I can do to make your life a little bit easier at work? Sometimes I see firms offering that employee to come in at 7 a.m. if they want and leaving by 3 p.m., 4 p.m. so that they can go spend their time or pick their family or pick their kids up from school. Like that's huge. Just having that flexibility to be more in your family's life. And that's a pretty simple ask. Of course, it could be adjusted for court, but if they're getting the work done, why not be rewarded?
Well, and honestly, like that's one of my favorite things about the globalization of this work. So like if you're an estate planning firm, you could hire people in the Philippines or whatever country. But like from the standpoint of this, if you're done at 5 o'clock your time, then they come in at 9 o'clock your time, 9 o'clock your time, which is 9 a.m. their time. They're done at 5 p.m. their time, which is 5 a.m. your time. You come back to a bunch of work being done at 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. Like you can really utilize time zones and stuff to your perspective without making people work crazy hours, because oftentimes, you don't need staff to be available the exact same time as you.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Anything else you want to make sure we cover?
I think, the only other thing I would say is really hire for the right reason and listen to your gut. I think it's the strongest out of any assessment or tool out there. And if there's something telling you that, I have really good intuition, so I feel this with different candidates, but something doesn't feel truthful, or the way that a question was answered or canceled for the wrong reason, or you just don't think that they're in your corner, like just really listen to that. That's what I've learned over time, is like trust the gut, it's always right.
And I want to not push back. The thing that I push my clients to do the most is ask that one extra question. And normally this isn't in the hiring process. It's like dealing with employees. But like there are those times where there's somebody, like maybe everybody in the firm is super extroverted, this person's introverted, you think they're hiding something in the question. But if you ask like that one follow-up, you'd realize they're just nervous or whatever it is. So like I'm so right there with you. As long as you are willing as the business owner to ask the follow-up to like confirm your gut, or personally, I love asking everybody the "what's your biggest weakness" question. Like it's the most trite interview question, and I'm looking for a trite answer or the people that are super honest. And then like I'll do the follow-up of, I try too hard. Well, it doesn't sound like a weakness, and like I'll push people to do it. And so it's like I like using the assumption of the question to figure out like where they're coming from in their answer, or confirming like how my gut feels about them.
That's a good point, because sometimes I will have firm owners contact me and we've had an outstanding interview process with a candidate, and they'll just tell me no without feedback. And I'm like, but why? Right? Like what was it? Like in order for me to hire, I need to know anyway of what it was. And they'll just be like, well, I don't know. And then I will go through a list of questions of have they asked those? And usually the answer is no. So good point.
Great advice. All right. So next week we're gonna have a slightly different episode. It's gonna be me talking to me, but we're gonna talk about time audits. I think this is the most important thing that I have all my clients do. We're also doing it this month in the luau. So I want to have a whole episode on what a time audit is. We have a free download, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can get a copy of a time audit. I want to walk you through how to do it, some tips and tricks on it, and then what to do afterwards. That'll be next week's episode. That being said, though, we still have Erin here. And if you've been listening for the last 55 minutes or so, you are smart enough to want to take even more of Erin's advice. So for people who want to do that, what's the best way for them to get in touch to hear more of your awesome wisdom and insight?
Sure, definitely email or LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll put that in the notes. My email is just info@yourbrandnetworker.com. If you look me up on LinkedIn, my last name is Andersen, S-E-N. Those are the two easiest ways to send me a message, and we can have an initial conversation just to see if it's a good fit. Biggest thing to remember is reach out in advance, not when you wanted to hire yesterday, but we're coming up on Q4. So thinking strategically about next year, these are the times to have those conversations.
Love it. And seriously, everybody, like Erin walks the walk. So seriously, contact her timely so she can do it. And she will make sure that you are a good fit for her just as much as she's a good fit for you to find employees that are just as much a good fit for you as your firm is for them.
Yeah.
So I love your whole, I want to call it a shtick, but it's not that sounds fake. I love your whole vibe on this, personality on this, take on this.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. That being said, Erin, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to everybody who watched and listened. We'll see you back here next week for me to talk about time audits. In the meantime, please check out Erin's stuff. Reach out if you're interested in hiring. Reach out now before it's an emergency. It's going to be better for everybody. And we'll see you back next week.